Well, folks, President Trump and his administration have been moving at the speed of light. The winning just continues to happen, and the Democrats can't keep up with it. They cannot keep up with this. The people who voted for the Democrats can't keep up with it. And the people who are leading the Democrat Party in America cannot keep up with all this winning. They have been caught flat-footed like no other party has ever been caught out of power like this. We got a lot to dive into today about this. But before we get into that, drop down below, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future. You know, we've got a number of new subscribers recently, and I just want to say to everyone out there, I really appreciate the vote of confidence in subscribing to our channel. We're going to do everything we can to get you the best information and analysis of what's going on. So today is President's Day, federal holiday. Many protest in the 5051 protest, which basically is a protest that the ideas originated on Reddit, and it stands for 50 protests in 50 states all on one day. How ingenious. I wonder what genius came up with that 5051, 50501. But they protested all over the country and at the U.S. Capitol. So thousands of protesters have that really disapprove of President Trump's agenda. And really it comes down to Elon Musk and his ability that has been given him in the privileges, I should say, that have been given to him to take through the federal budget a fine-tooth comb and basically refer points of contention, things that may not be budget items that may not be in line with President Trump's agenda, refer it off to President Trump, to his office. They review it and then ultimately are going to have to make decisions whether this is discretionary spending. Is this money been appropriated from Congress? What are the steps, if it has been appropriated from Congress, to whether is that divert it, not spend the money, whatever they have to do to stop this waste that is happening within the government. Obviously, very mad about the independent watchdogs, the inspector generals that have been fired from the federal government. And here's my thing, my take on the whole inspector general. So many people are mad about this. There was a government report from the budget office that said between 2018 and 2020, just in the entitlement programs, there was about 110, I believe, on average, $1 billion in fraud every single year. From 2018 to 2020, there was over like $450 billion in fraud that occurred that they know about. This is just what they know about. How have these inspector generals been doing their job? They are supposed to be watchdogs. They are supposed to be the oversight to make sure this doesn't happen. How are we losing over $100 billion just in the entitlement programs? So I am totally on board with President Trump and his decisions to fire those watchdogs. They have not been doing their job. They're a leech on society, I shouldn't say society. They're a leech on the on the taxpayers that pay federal taxes, and really on our country's future, because ultimately we don't bring in enough money to take care of our bills. We run what, a $2 billion deficit? Let's see if we can get the debt clock up. I think we run over a $2 billion deficit. Yep, currently the federal deficit is about $2 billion, and what you'd say it's going up about $200, $300 every second. I don't know if I said 2 billion. I meant 2 trillion. I don't know if I said that right. $2 trillion a year. And look at this. DOGE has already saved about $107 billion. Real-time saving from waste, fraud, and abuse inside of the federal government. But we're running a $2 trillion deficit every year. It's like these watchdogs were not doing their job. I don't know what they were doing. Were they paid off? I am not saying anything. I think we should be open-minded to what the realities could be for those people and why they weren't doing their job properly. Now, we all know over the weekend, President Trump making some statements on Twitter, or I should say on Truth Social, posting a quote, "He who saves his country does not violate any law," that he posted over the weekend. And at some of these chants around the country, "No king, no crown, we will not back down." It's just like, what king out there wants to make his empire smaller? What king out there wants to reduce the amount of money that they're spending? They want wealth. They want to expand. In which I guess you could say, and I'm not really helping make my point right here, but obviously President Trump wants to expand outside of our current footprint, whether it's Greenland, whether it's the Panama Canal, whether it's Canada, which I do think there are very serious thoughts from President Trump about, especially Canada, Greenland. Panama, I think less so. I think more if there was some sort of deal that was made, I think he would be okay with that. But ultimately, I think Greenland, President Trump is going to make a very strong attempt to take over Greenland, whether it's economically. I don't think it's going to get to military force. I think it's going to be through coercion. He's going to do what he has to do. But what kind of king are you going to say? Well, it just makes no sense. It makes no sense. But hold up, they're saying no king. But hold up. Who's the king? Is it Elon Musk or is it President Trump? They want to talk about President Elon Musk. It's just ridiculous. It is just absolutely ridiculous. There were people who were wearing or waving upside down flags. Yeah, it's just ridiculous what these people are doing. President Trump is trying to slash the size of our federal government. And there are so many people that hate President Trump so much that you're taking a big chunk of society and squeezing it into this 80-20 issue where they're squeezing into the 20. That's a tight spot to fit into. It is a very tight spot. There are people there who are mad because Trump pushed transgender people out of the military, which is totally false. They have not come out and said what they're going to do with the people who are actively enrolled, the 2,000, maybe 3,000 people who are actively enrolled. It is just they are not preventing hiring these people because they have a mental illness, which anybody, regardless of their gender, can be disqualified from military service if they have a severe mental disorder. So there's absolutely nothing wrong or unprecedented about what President Trump is doing here. Now, they're saying he expresses concerns that protections, this person, Mr. Morris, who is the president of the Gay Men's Choir of Washington, D.C. Well, we're going to take you very, very seriously, I guess. Says that he expressed concerns that protections for same-sex marriages could be threatened next. Oh my God. How far is your head up your butt right now? Like, honestly, how far is your head buried in the sand? President Trump was the first president that campaigned supporting gay marriage. Remember, let's take a little time travel back to 2008. President Obama, when he ran to be president, did not support rights as far as marriage rights for homosexuals when he ran the first time. President Trump was the first president to run on that and win. It is absolutely ridiculous, asinine. These people are at a new low of Trump derangement syndrome. It is just absolutely ridiculous. One people who traveled from Miami to Washington to protest says there's nothing more patriotic than fighting against tyranny. Gosh, doesn't a tyrant, don't they try and take all the power from themselves, not send rights back to individual states? Just super weird. I just don't, just super weird. He just must be a very unique tyrant, Trump must be. Just get your head out of your ass. Like, let's be honest about this. We're out here because we're patriots. I think a patriot would want the federal government to run as efficiently as possible. You remember back in like the 90s when Bill Clinton wanted to cut the federal workforce by like 12%? Wanted to cut the federal budget by like 20%? Like, what happened? He wanted to reduce the footprint of the government. And and I'm going to give Bill Clinton some credit right here. I think post-presidency, he has been a terrible post-president. He has got a leash around his neck by the radical left-wing lunatics in the Democrat Party. But when he was president, there was a lot of things I disagree with. Do not get me wrong. NAFTA, horrible, horrible trade. Horrible trade agreement. NAFTA was terrible for Americans. But President Bill Clinton was the last president who was able to to shrink the size of the federal budget and was able to capitalize on the internet, the growth of the internet in the late 90s, and pay down debt. Our deficit decreased. We ran surpluses while Bill Clinton was president. Not saying everything he did was perfect. Do not get me wrong. There were some terrible things, whether it was the crime bill, whether it was NAFTA, whether it was an assault weapons ban. Trust me, there are plenty of things to critique Bill Clinton on. But ultimately, when you look at something like DOGE and what they're doing, not too far off from what Democrats have been campaigning and talking about for decades and decades and decades. So I just don't understand. Maybe is it because you're not getting the credit? Is it because evil Hitler, Orange Hitler, Trump is the one who's doing it and not you? Well, is it really my fault that the Democrats were more focused on trying to force 100 million Americans to take an experimental shot? Was it my fault that the Biden administration actively censored people, censored conservative voices on social media? They pushed social media companies to censor viewpoints they did not agree with. I'm sorry that Biden was more worried about a Title IX rewrite that would have, thank God, would have allowed states, would have forced school districts to look at people based on gender identity, not sex. They could not discriminate against someone on the basis of gender identity, which means that spaces like a female bathroom would be for anybody who identifies as a female. So if you have a mentally ill 17-year-old boy who wants to go into the girls' bathroom, who wants to go into the girls' locker room, they would have been forced to allow that transgender male, that mentally ill male with gender dysphoria, to go into the women's bathroom, to be on the women's sports teams, and to be in the women's locker rooms. That is just the facts. I'm sorry that the Democrats were more focused. It's like really more focused on shutting down the country, making things worse here. I'm sorry. Like, that's what you guys focused on when you had 2 years of full control of the government, and then what? 2 years where you had the presidency and the Senate. I'm sorry you were too focused on forgiving loans for students who could go and get, basically, they would go and get a degree in social work or a degree in gender ideology, queer dance theory. You know, you're too busy giving handouts to people. But, you know, I don't know what to tell you. I really don't know. That's what you guys focused on. And this is what the GOP is focused on. Protecting kids. Protecting women. Protecting the autonomy of women's sports. It's like, I'm sorry that this is what we're focused on, and that's not what you're focused on, and now you're throwing a hissy fit like a 4-year-old child. And we know that Democrats across the board are struggling to mentally cope and to counter President Trump's moves, especially the Democrats in Congress. They are really struggling. They do not know how to respond. You know, I'm sorry that you guys were focused on using U.S. aid to peddle millions of dollars to left-wing media outlets that would end up covering you favorably. And I'm sorry we're dismantling this bureaucracy that the Democrats created that would still do the will of the Democrats even when they were out of power. I'm sorry that we're dismantling your corrupt, unelected bureaucrats that have controlled our federal government for decades and decades. And I keep saying I'm sorry, but am I really? No, I'm not sorry one bit, to be honest with you. You didn't have to vote for Kamala Harris. You didn't have to vote for trans and kids. You didn't have to. You didn't have to vote for that, but a lot of people did. And I think there's a lot of Democrat voters who are very frustrated with the lack of a more concise, directed attack back at President Trump. I think there is a big satisfaction that Democrats have been really caught flat-footed. They don't know how to do. Instead, they're sitting here defending billions and billions of dollars of waste and fraud that have been found within USAID, the hundreds of billions of dollars that have been uncovered so far in our federal budget. And we haven't even gone through the Pentagon yet. We haven't even gone through the entitlement programs yet. And they found hundreds of billions of dollars in fraud, waste, abuse, and bureaucrats doing the work of the Democrat Party while they're out of office. You didn't have to. And they've coined this as a constitutional crisis. This is a constitutional crisis. I don't know how we're going to get through this here. They're assertions of executive authority in the face of legal challenges. Oh, we are in a constitutional crisis. It's a symbol of distress. There is no the only distress that people have are from the people who were getting these handouts from the government. The people who weren't getting a handout from the government, the people who weren't bankrolled by USAID, The people who weren't ripping off the U.S. government, they're not in distress. They're actually loving this. They love what's going on here. But for those radicals, the people who are basically living off U.S. taxpayers, they're in distress. And, I really don't care that they're in distress. I sleep a little better at night knowing that some of these people are in distress. These big, and I shouldn't say people, entities. I want these entities to be in distress. They need to be stress tested. You don't just all of a sudden learn to bench press 200 pounds. That's just not how it works. You got to stress test yourself until you're able to get up there. You start at 40 pounds on each side, and then you add 5, you work your way up there. It's a stress test. And that's what President Trump is doing to the federal government. How can we operate more efficiently? How can we look at the federal government and make sure taxpayer dollars are being spent as well as it possibly can? You can see numbers of pictures from all over the country. What would Jimmy do? I don't know. Maybe Jimmy gives he would give the Panama Canal back to those people, even though we paid for it, we built it, we made an agreement with them to get this land. Wake up, America. This is a coup. No, this is what I believe 77 million Americans voted for. Human needs, not corporate greeds. Well, if we're cutting funding for most of these big corporations who are getting millions and millions, like Politico, who got $9 million in 2024 from USAID, I don't think we're looking out for big corporations. And then, Canada, they're looking to cancel a lot of their contracts that they have with Elon Musk and Elon Musk affiliated companies. But like we said, this was part of the 50-51 movement. It's just kind of ridiculous what these people are doing. Let's just take a look at this right here. Let's look at some of these protests. For lawyers for the Constitution. Where in the Constitution does it say that we have to have a fourth branch of government called the bureaucrats? I don't really remember where they were. That's in the Constitution. And I believe that through impoundment, the executive branch has the authority to stop some of these funds from being dispersed. We've talked about this before. That's going to be a big part of President Trump's agenda to cut and slash this funding. Here's another video from Washington, D.C. It's just absolutely ridiculous what's going on. But that's that. The democracy playbook, preventing and reversing democratic backsliding. Oh, give me a break. Yeah, no, it's called reversing Democrat backsliding, because the only thing that's on their back and sliding are the Democrats. Them slimy. I'm just going to pause myself there. It's just ridiculous what's going on. This is what these people want. They're protesting so we don't cut waste out of the federal budget. Like, oh my God. Have these people gone so insane? Has Trump really done this to them? Has Trump really put them? Oh my gosh. Huh. But, I'm all about it. I don't care what these people protest about. Screw them. Go to work, get a job. How about that? That's what I say. But let me know. What are your thoughts down in the comments on these protests? Do you think Trump's doing the right things? You think we're on a better path than we were? Let's even 4 years ago, even a year ago, even 4 months ago. Do you think we're on a better path? And can we all just take a moment of silence? Just because Kamala Harris isn't our president. Let's just take a moment of silence just to thank God. Thank God that she is not our president. How would she do? It's like Ukraine would have fallen by now. Basically, Palestine would try and eliminate, or Gaza and Hamas would basically try and eliminate the entire state of Israel. They are already trying to do that, but, Kamala Harris would keep the leash tight on Israel. But let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments. And as always, like, share, subscribe. Don't ever miss another video. That's all for today, folks. Have a good one.